Welcome to Bookies Talk on the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast. I am Amy Becker-Perez, the book club associate, and I am joined by our high school librarian, Leah Hotchkiss. Thanks for joining me on this podcast, Leah.
Thanks for having me on.
If you have ever been in the lower level of the Cook branch of our Cook Memorial Library District, you will find both the book club collection and the young adult high school collection, as well as the science fiction collection, which I think I can say without spoiling our conversation that you and I both are drawn to. So I'm guessing, Leah, that you might agree with me that the lower level of Cook Library is the place to find some amazing books.
Yep, I definitely agree. We've got a lot of great stuff in the young adult collection especially. We've got graphic novels and manga. We've got anime down here. If you're looking for stuff that's not books, too, we've got lots of fun little activities. We've got craft boxes and a collaborative bulletin board. So it's fun to swing down here and see what's going on.
There are some really fun things down here, and it's really fun to see kids come back and spend some good time back here and see what they've come up with. And I've brought my own children down here who are younger than high school age, and they were like, whoa! And I'm like, no, not yet. You don't get to be here yet. So it's something for younger kids to look forward to as well. So there are some amazing authors included in the stacks. And some of those authors have also written books geared toward adult readers as well. Today we're going to look at some authors that have written books for multiple age groups. And so you listeners, maybe you'll find some authors that you want to check out or check in with some formerly favorite authors of your own youth. When I was a child, I read all of Madeline L. Ingles' books for children and youth. And so as I grew up, I was thrilled to discover her novels for adults, which felt very much the same. And other authors' children's books hit differently than their adult books. Judy Blume, who wrote Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing and Super Fudge for kids, also wrote Summer Sisters for adults. And this had a different vibe, but was still a fun book from a trusted author. Leah, do you have favorite authors from your childhood that you have also discovered have written for adults?
Yeah, I think the one that pops up to me initially is Holly Black. I definitely read almost all of her books as a child. She's an insanely prolific writer, so she had a big old chunk of books in the middle grade section when I was younger. The Spiderwick Chronicles, Doll Bones, and then I found later, she's writing young adult books, The Cruel Prince, The Stolen Heir, and as well as I've also very recently found out she wrote an adult book semi-recently, I think The Book of Night, which I haven't read yet, but she's a very, very interesting fantasy author, so I'm sure she's got some very cool stuff to share in all age groups.
Yeah, it's really fun when you think that you've found everything that somebody has written, and then you all of a sudden, oh my goodness, they've got more. So now, putting on our library hats, there are many authors who have made that jump from either category, from young adult into adult, or maybe they were writing adult books and then went into young adult books. So we're going to discuss some of those books. Do you have an author that you are thinking of?
I think definitely the first one that pops into my head is my favorite author, Brandon Sanderson, who, just like Holly Black, insanely prolific. I do not know how he writes so many books.
He has a lot.
But his big, I think, breakout fantasy series was the Mistborn trilogy. Very, very fascinating world-building magic system. He's always very good at developing cultures and ideas of how a magic would work with specific, like almost scientific rules. And I think he's able to pull that into his younger books as well. But also not making it super complex for, the younger readers. He'll write for middle schoolers and young adult. I think my favorite of his young adult series is the Skyward trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. I think the third one just came out recently, which is a sci-fi rather than his usual fantasy. But still has that same focus on developing a world with rules that make sense despite their fantastic nature. And, also very adventurous and very fun for the younger readers.
So I read Mistborn a number of years ago, and so that is aimed at adults.
That is very much an adult series.
And but science fiction. I don't always keep track. Or is that fantasy?
It's hard to pinpoint him. The magic system in Mistborn, I would consider it a magic system, but because he has so many specific rule sets to his magic systems, you could also consider it sci-fi.
Okay.
Especially in the way he develops these, otherworldly cultures. And not to spoil too much, but a lot of his books are connected to each other in some, ambiguous solar system sort of way.
Okay.
So there is, there's that sci-fi and then there's the magic. Okay. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah. I might be getting too much into the nuts and bolts of things here, but I am intrigued. And I really enjoyed that Mistborn series. And if I weren't always trying to find new books, I'd probably just delve into a world of Brandon Sanderson if I could.
Well, you'll never run out. So.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah. Well, the first author I thought of when we started talking about this theme was Elizabeth Acevedo. I first read her book, The Poet X, a number of years ago when I was on vacation. And that is a young adult book that won the National Book Award. And it's a lyrical, honest, coming-of-age story. It's about a sophomore, Xiomara. Ooh, I did not say her name right. But that's part of the problem is that people don't say her name right. She always has to tell people how to say her name. And she's growing up in a largely Dominican community in Harlem with her twin brother, her distant father, and her mother, who is a very religious Catholic woman. And she is a tall girl. She is tough on the outside, but always thinking and questioning on the inside. And she questions particularly the patriarchy of her church and the community around her and in her home. And she pours herself into her poetry and then begins a relationship with a boy from her school. And the entire book is just beautifully created. The lyricism of the book is just gorgeous. And so then last summer, I heard that this adult book was coming out called Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo. And it was also a beautiful book that was very different than The Poet X. It was also a very female-centric book with themes of magic and generational relationships. It's about a Dominican-American family, the Marta family, and each of the women, with the exception of one aunt, have a certain supernatural gift that they were born with. And the novel's driving curiosity is that one of the women of the older generation has the gift of knowing when someone will die. And her name is Flor. And she's decided that she's going to throw herself a living wake. But she won't tell anybody if she knows the date that when she is going to die. So the whole question is, if she knows that she's going to die soon, and that's why she wants this wake, or if she just wants to throw a party. I always seem to be drawn toward people who are poets that then become authors, and so that beautiful telling is there. So it's a touching and entertaining novel.
Yeah, there's something, even if a poet is writing prose, there's always something very lyrical and very image-heavy about the way poets write prose.
Yeah.
I remember I did read The Poet X. I actually listened to it as an audiobook, and I really can't recommend experiencing that book any other way because the rhythm of that spoken word poetry is just, it really elevates the story.
I'm sure.
So I'm very curious, listening to maybe Family Lore, if you listen to it as an audiobook, if it maybe would have you, maybe you'd notice that same lyrical rhythm to it.
I bet. I wonder. That would be amazing. I should check that. Okay. Listeners, you should do that test. Somebody do that and report back to us. All right. Do you have another book?
Yes. Leigh Bardugo is the one who came up for me, who is very popular in the YA sphere, The Six of Crows, Shadow and Bone.
Yeah.
That kind of gritty fantasy feeling of, it's very, especially Six of Crows is one of my favorite YA books. Mm-hmm. I love the dynamics of these very mismatched characters going on. A fantasy heist.
Yes.
You can't really get better than a fantasy heist, in my opinion. But Leigh Bardugo also is starting to write adult books.
Yeah.
The one that I have read is Ninth House.
Okay.
Which, again, also has that sort of gritty fantasy feeling to it.
Yeah.
Different from Six of Crows is this one's actually our world fantasy, an urban fantasy.
Oh, okay.
With a very heavy dark academia vibe. So it's definitely, I would say it is much more an adult story. It's taking place in a college. We have, college students with college student desires and wants and needs.
Yes.
But also just is able to maybe go a little harder with that dark gothic feeling that if you liked Six of Crows, if you're an adult reader who reads YA and you're looking for something to jump, I think the Le Bardugo is a great place to try that, jumping into adult fantasy.
Yeah.
And if you're, a teen who's starting to maybe think, I'd like to read something a little more in depth, I think also Ninth House is a great one to jump into from Six of Crows.
Yeah. Well, jumping genres just a little bit, I learned the name Nicola Yoon this summer.
Oh, really?
Yes. The book that she came out with this summer was a psychological thriller called One of Our Kind. Her previous books that were for young adults are named Everything, Everything, and The Sun is Also a Star.
I've read, didn't actually finish Everything, Everything.
Okay.
I got distracted by some other books at the time. But I think it's very interesting that her adult book is a psychological thriller, because from what I understand, a lot of her YA is almost like teen romance.
Okay.
Everything, Everything is about a girl with chronic illness.
Okay.
Experiencing a romance.
Oh, okay.
So when my initial feeling of the vibe of Nicola Yoon is like these soft, almost Fault in Our Stars type romances. But then to find out she writes psychological thrillers for adults, I mean...
Well, this is her first one.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
One of Our Kind is Nicola Yoon's first book aimed at adults. It tells the story of Jasmine Williams and her husband King, who are an upper-class black couple who have one young son and are expecting another child. And they move to this upscale, all-black neighborhood in LA, where they believe it's kind of like a black utopia. And she in particular is excited about all that it has to offer and is hoping that there'll be great conversations around justice and around being able to make a difference in the world. But every time she tries to bring up these topics, she gets shut out. And nobody's willing to talk. She tries to start a Black Lives Matter chapter, and all but the preschool teacher tries to join her on this, but no one else will have a conversation with her about this. And as she digs deeper, she starts to realize that there's a really bad secret within the community, and the secret threatens the life and sense of being of everybody in the community. And it's it's a really suspenseful and fun story.
Definitely a departure from her other works.
Yeah, it's fun when authors play, right? When they're like, I think I'll do that. I think I'll try this.
I think personally for me, I think that's it's almost inspiring to see people not let themselves be pigeonholed. Yeah. And that it's okay to branch out and try different things.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to read both. Finish Everything, and read this new one too, and just compare the writing styles and such.
There's just never enough time.
No, there isn't.
Do you have any others that you would like to add?
So, actually, as we're talking, I'm thinking of Ali Hazelwood.
Oh, yes.
Who writes a lot of adult romances. Yeah. But also wrote a fairly well-received YA romance, Check and Mate, recently, which is about a girl who gets involved in the chess world, becoming a professional chess player.
Oh, that's great.
And of course, there's a romance. Yeah. And, what surprised me a lot is that it's a very fluffy romance. Yeah. And I brought it to my teen book club, my high school book club, thinking, well, a lot of them here don't really like romance, but we should maybe dip into some other things and we'll try it. And I was very surprised that a lot of them were really into it. They really enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
I can really recommend that one if you're not always a romance reader and you're looking for something a little interesting to try. Yeah. And if you like that one, Ali Hazelwood's got a lot of other adult books as well that are pretty well received.
They are pretty well received. We could probably keep talking for a really long time. But I think we will close out there. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad that you were here. Looking ahead to the fall, we are excited to announce that our Book Buzz will be live and in person, and we will be giving you the scoop on books to look forward to that will be being published in the next few months. So put September 18th at 7 p.m. on your calendar and watch for more information coming shortly. Also, for those of you who are looking for some introverted yet with company reading time, we will be starting an after-hours silent reading club. The first one will be held in October, and so I invite you to stay tuned for more information for that. If you're asking for a personalized reading suggestion, fill out our Ask a Bookie form on the website, and we'll give you a personalized list of suggestions, no matter what kind of book you're in the mood for. You can also find us at the library's website, Shelf Life, the blog, or by emailing us at webmaster@cooklib.org. As always, you can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.